All right, Isaiah chapter 40. Now again, Isaiah 40 and onwards are believed to have been written after the defeat of Sennacherib's army and the events of Isaiah 36 through 39. And so now we're looking ahead of the Assyrian threat to the looming rise of the Babylonian Empire and the captivity that has been prophesied against Israel. So in Isaiah chapter 40, we get started. Isaiah describes the preparation ministry of those who proclaim the glorious coming of Israel's Messiah, which was partially fulfilled by John the Baptist. We see this in Matthew chapter 3, Mark chapter 1, Luke chapter 3, John chapter 1, all call John the Baptist a personification of the messenger of Isaiah chapter 40. I'm actually going to get a lot deeper into that specifically and John the Baptist ministry in my cohort series called Overcoming with Prophetic Leadership. So I'll actually spend a little bit more time in Isaiah chapter 40 than we'll get to today. But if you're looking for more information about that specifically, then make sure you check out my prophetic leadership series and sign up for one of those cohorts because we're really going to dive into this chapter a lot more even then. But yet, beyond that, Isaiah also compares the outcomes of those who trust in idols and those who trust in God. Now, Isaiah, beginning right from the top, says, "Comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and cry to her, meaning say to her, that her warfare is ended, her iniquity is pardoned." It's good news. It's news of comfort. It's news that's celebratory. This is the period where Israel's adversaries have been defeated. The Messiah has come, and there's this promise of deliverance that's permanent, that's lasting. Of course, we looked at many of those in prior weeks, but this is what Isaiah is referencing here at this beginning of this chapter. And what's beautiful too is this: Israel has received from the Lord's hand a double portion of blessing for all her sins. That the conversion rate here is just amazing. That even though Israel has acted unfaithfully, the Lord actually provides a double portion of covenant blessing through the redemptive process that is worked through at the end of the age. So a voice cries in the wilderness, "Prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley will be lifted up, every mountain will be made low, and the uneven ground shall become level, the rough places made plain, that the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh will see it together." That's an amazing phrase, that all flesh will see it together. Commentators generally agree means simultaneously, that there's not just a figurative, the knowledge of God will cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. No, this is something very specific, like a moment when literally all created flesh will see the glory of God at one time. So that's an important distinction because that's very unique in terms of the gospel and the good news reaching the ends of the earth. There's an undeniable moment where every eye will see the Lord, what the mouth of the Lord has spoken. It's interesting. Now right here at this message, this is the first of really three messages that Isaiah gives in this chapter. And this first one primarily addresses heart preparation for the arrival of Israel's Messiah. The circumstances of the tribulation that precede the Messiah's arrival would hardly allow for the creation or preparation of a literal highway. Isaiah's ministry has been characterized by God's priority of relationship over rituals and the lengths to which God will go to win Israel's heart. So when he's saying prepare the way of the Lord, it starts with our personal relationship and Israel's relationship to God. Not just, is there a functioning temple? Are they fulfilling ritual duties? But no, he's really saying you need to prepare the way of your heart to receive a covenant renewal that comes at the Messiah's arrival. Now, the next message, a voice says, "Cry." And what shall I cry? All flesh is grass. And the beauty, and all its beauty is like the flower of the fading flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades. And when the breath of the Lord blows on it, surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of the Lord will stand forever. Now, this second message compares the strength of man's ambition to the strength of God's ability to fulfill his purposes. whereas all the strength of man's promises are just fading, and the Lord can easily, just effortlessly, overcome it. Well, by comparison, the strength of the word of the Lord stands forever. So it's definitely an appeal, even from the onset of this chapter, to trust in the Lord. And then we have this next message, the third message. Go up on a high mountain, O Zion. This is actually Zion that is the messenger here. Herald of good news. I love that title, that Zion becomes the herald of good news. What a hopeful thing. Lift up your voice with strength, O Jerusalem, herald of good news. Lift it up, fear not. Say to the cities of Judah, that's the surrounding region in southern Israel, behold your God. Behold, the Lord God comes in might. His arm rules for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and so on. He will tend his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs into his arms and carry them in his bosom and gently lead those who are with young. Remarkable demonstration of the coming of the Messiah, of Israel's deliverance. This is definitely a eschatological, meaning it's an end time promise of Israel's Messiah coming to deliver, to establish the Messianic age and fulfill his covenants. It's beautiful. Here he comes. This third message is to be proclaimed by Jerusalem to Judah. Judah's messianic deliverer has come. This message describes the circumstances and posture of the Messiah's approach toward Jerusalem to claim his victory. Now, not only is the Messiah overwhelmingly powerful, but he's also very tender and compassionate for the weakest among his people. Where other leaders might have overlooked or even trampled the weak in their rise to glory, Israel's Messiah accommodates their needs personally and gently, which we see here. He will tend his flock like a shepherd. Just the beautiful compassion of his leadership, even in such a conquering event like the arrival of the Messiah. Now, from verse 12 and onward, even from chapter 40, verse 12 into future chapters, begins a pretty continuous strain of thought that a lot of commentators do start to group together. Not necessarily that there shouldn't be chapter divisions, because there may be some separate messages within these chapters, but you start to really sense a continuous message that Isaiah is reiterating and reinforcing passage by passage by passage as we get through this. So starting in verse 12 and onward, it becomes this larger message that we're now stepping into. Of all the appropriate questions concerning how to prepare for the coming Messiah, God actually gives some instruction here. To the preparation of the heart. Specifically, God presents his persuasive argument for Israel to abandon trusting in the empty promises of humanity or idolatry, and instead trust in God alone. Trusting God with the future was the first step of the journey of faith and covenant adherence. So we just start to go through some of these sections. Verses 12 through 14, we really have God expresses the uncreated God of wisdom, whose wisdom alone created the whole universe. He says, who else has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand? Who has measured the Spirit of the Lord? Whom did he consult and who made him understand? Who taught him the path of justice? Of course, he's the uncreated God. He is the creator, and his wisdom and his power is absolute. And then, of course, we have the comparison then to the nations in verses 15 through 17. The cumulative ability of the nations is so insignificant by comparison to God. Behold, the nations, the sum cumulative power of the nations, are like a drop from a bucket. They are accounted as the small dust on the scale, meaning they're within even the margin of error where we just don't even really have to bother accounting for them. Lebanon would not suffice for fuel, and so on. All the nations are as nothing before him. They are accounted by him as less than nothing and emptiness. Now, part of the reasoning for this language and this message is to call Israel, to draw Israel's attention away from relying on the strength of other nations, where they would, rather than rely on God for their deliverance, they would build diplomatic alliances and security alliances in an attempt to secure their own destiny apart from having to rely on God. In many ways, they would create these security alliances with other nations as a expression of their desire to kind of remove their reliance from God, on God from the equation. And so God has to confront that and say, you're going to trust in these other nations, but their some power is as nothing to me by comparison. It's not necessarily just being derogatory of the nations. He loves the nations. But by comparison of who you trust, where you place your trust, of course, God is the only one worthy. To whom then will you liken God? Now he starts addressing their idolatry, to even entertain the idea that they could put their trust in the power of some crafted piece of gold or wood for their deliverance. To God, it's just so insulting. But you see how he addresses that here in verses 18 through 20, and then down into 21. Do you not know? Do you not hear? Has it not been told to you from the beginning? Which it has. He's kind of going back now to Moses and their initial covenant that happened in Exodus. It's God. It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers. Again, just demonstrating God's supreme authority, his transcendent power that is just completely unparalleled. He stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. It's kind of beautiful if you think about it, the stars in the sky. Who brings princes to nothing, even just in a moment. If you're concerned about the threat of a present prince or adversary, he says, I can bring all those adversaries to nothing and make the rulers of the earth as emptiness. Scarcely are they planted and scarcely are they sown. Scarcely has their stem taken root, meaning just barely. I mean that word, the Hebrew word there for scarcely, is like no sooner do they even barely take root, and God can just blow them away. Just poof. Just they very, very, very weak in terms of their ability to determine their own destiny. To whom then will you compare me? That I should be like him, says the Holy One. So lift up your eyes and see. This lift up your eyes is referring to that curtain that's been spread out. He stretches out the heavens like a curtain. He lift up your eyes to the heavens, look at the stars and see who created all of these. He who brings out their number, calling them all by name. By the greatness of his might and because of his strong power, not one is missing. His attention to detail and his power to sustain the universe. I mean, again, categorically unparalleled. So then, why? Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, that your way is hidden from the Lord, that my right is disregarded from God? They're complaining that God's apathetic, that God's not fulfilling his end of the deal, that they're not satisfied with the degree of covenant fulfillment. Of course, in the meantime, they're in complete covenant rebellion by comparison. And so God's calling them back to that covenant faithfulness. So have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of heavens and earth. He does not grow faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint. To him who has no might, he increases strength. He says, if you will for a moment start to trust in me, my power becomes your power. And I will give strength to those. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength. Even youths, even your most energetic, your most up-and-coming leaders, your next generation, still the strongest among you will grow faint and be weary, and your young men will fall exhausted. But anyone who would wait on the Lord, who would put their trust in the Lord, will renew their strength. They will mount up on wings like eagles. They will run and not be weary. They will walk and not faint. Remarkable, because there's great cause for concern of weariness and strength growing faint in the weight of God's discipline of the tribulation. And so this is actually a really vital appeal being made to Israel in the midst of God's discipline, saying, even if you're feeling faint and weary, even if you've been taken into exile in Babylon or into captivity by the Antichrist, if you will put your hope in the Lord, you're going to see something turn around like you've never seen before. And of course, we've looked at some of those promises previously, but now we're going to look at more of them as we get into chapter 41 and onward.